Welcome to a journey through the reality of the Soviet Union, a nation that once spanned one-sixth of the Earth's land surface. The USSR, or Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, was established in 1922 and lasted until 1991. It was a superpower that shaped global politics, culture, and society for nearly 7 decades. In this video, we'll explore what life was truly like behind the Iron Curtain, moving beyond propaganda to uncover the daily experiences of ordinary people. From bustling cities to remote villages, the Soviet Union was a land of contrasts, innovation, and challenges. Let's begin by understanding its origins and the vision that drove its creation. Soviet Union emerged from the ashes of the Russian Empire after the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution. Led by Vladimir Lenin, the Bolsheviks promised a new society based on equality and workers' rights. The early years were marked by civil war, famine, and political upheaval, but also by hope for a better future. The USSR quickly became a centralized state with Moscow as its capital. The government controlled all aspects of life, from industry to education. This centralization allowed rapid industrialization but also led to strict control over personal freedoms. The dream was grand, but the reality was often harsh. Lenin's leadership set the tone for the Soviet system. His policies such as war communism and the new economic policy aimed to rebuild the economy and consolidate power. While war communism brought strict state control and hardship, the new economic policy allowed some private enterprise, giving people a brief respite. Daily life was a mix of scarcity and hope. People queued for basic goods, but there was a sense of purpose in building a new society. Education and literacy campaigns spread across the country, and many believed they were part of a historic transformation. After Lenin's death in 1924, Joseph Stalin rose to power. His rule would define the Soviet Union for decades. Stalin's policies focused on rapid industrialization and collectivization of agriculture. Factories sprang up across the nation, and millions were moved from rural areas to cities. However, this progress came at a tremendous human cost. Forced labor camps known as Gulags became infamous, and political purges instilled fear throughout society. Despite the hardships, the USSR became a global industrial giant, but at the expense of personal freedoms and countless lives. One of the most significant and tragic policies of the Stalin era was collectivization. The government seized private farms and combined them into large state-run collectives. This was meant to boost agricultural output and feed the growing cities. However, the policy was disastrous for many peasants. Resistance was met with brutal repression, and mismanagement led to widespread famine, most notably the Holodomor in Ukraine. Millions perished, and rural life was forever changed. The scars of collectivization would linger for generations, shaping attitudes toward authority and the state. Gulag system was a network of forced labor camps spread across the Soviet Union. Millions of people, including political prisoners, intellectuals, and ordinary citizens, were sent to these camps for real or imagined crimes. Life in the Gulag was harsh and often deadly. Prisoners endured grueling labor, inadequate food, and extreme weather. The Gulags became a symbol of state repression and the dark side of Soviet power. Despite this, some prisoners managed to survive and later shared their stories, shedding light on this hidden aspect of Soviet reality. World War II, known in the USSR as the Great Patriotic War, was a defining moment for the Soviet people. The country suffered immense losses, with millions of soldiers and civilians killed. Cities like Stalingrad and Leningrad became symbols of resistance and sacrifice. Despite the devastation, the Soviet Union emerged as one of the victors, expanding its influence across Eastern Europe. The war fostered a sense of unity and pride, but also left deep scars. Rebuilding the nation required enormous effort, and the trauma of war lingered for decades. After the war, the Soviet Union faced the daunting task of rebuilding. Cities lay in ruins and millions were homeless. The government launched massive reconstruction projects, mobilizing workers from across the country. Factories, schools, and housing were built at a rapid pace. The post-war years saw a renewed emphasis on heavy industry and military strength. While living standards slowly improved, shortages and rationing persisted. The state continued to control most aspects of life, but there was a sense of optimism as the USSR rebuilt itself from the ashes. At the end of World War II, the Soviet Union found itself in a new rivalry with the United States. This period, known as the Cold War, was marked by political tension, military competition, and ideological conflict. The USSR established a sphere of influence in Eastern Europe, supporting communist governments and suppressing dissent. The arms race and space race became symbols of the competition between East and West. For ordinary citizens, the Cold War meant both pride in Soviet achievements and anxiety about the threat of nuclear war. For most people, daily life in the Soviet Union was a mix of routine and resilience. Housing was often cramped, with families sharing communal apartments. Queues for food and consumer goods were a common sight. Despite material shortages, education and healthcare were free, and many took pride in the country's scientific and cultural achievements. Social life revolved around work, school, and state-sponsored events. While the state promoted a sense of collective purpose, many found ways to create personal happiness within the system's constraints. Education was a cornerstone of Soviet society. The government invested heavily in schools and universities, aiming to create a highly literate and skilled workforce. Science and engineering were especially emphasized, fueling the USSR's technological advances. Children attended state-run schools, where they learned not only academic subjects but also Soviet ideology. While the system produced many talented professionals, it also demanded conformity and loyalty to the state. Still, for many, education was a path to opportunity and social mobility. Healthcare in the Soviet Union was universal and free at the point of service. The state built hospitals and clinics across the country, even in remote areas. Doctors and nurses were respected members of society, and public health campaigns targeted diseases like tuberculosis and polio. While the system provided basic care for everyone, it often struggled with shortages of medicine and modern equipment. Despite these challenges, the promise of healthcare for all was a source of pride for many Soviet citizens. Women played a vital role in Soviet society. From the earliest days, the government promoted gender equality, encouraging women to work in factories, farms, and offices. Women became doctors, engineers, and even cosmonauts. Maternity leave and childcare were provided by the state, helping women balance work and family. However, traditional expectations persisted, and many women faced a double burden of employment and domestic responsibilities. Despite these challenges, Soviet women made significant contributions to the nation's progress. Soviet Union was renowned for its achievements in science and technology. From launching the first satellite Sputnik to sending Yuri Gagarin into space, the USSR was a pioneer in the space race. Research institutes and universities produced breakthroughs in physics, chemistry, and engineering. The government invested heavily in scientific education and research, seeing innovation as key to national strength. While some advances were world-leading, others were hampered by bureaucracy and secrecy. Still, Soviet science left a lasting legacy. Culture flourished in the Soviet Union, though always under the watchful eye of the state. Literature, music, theater, and film were used to promote socialist values, but also provided an outlet for creativity. Writers like Tolstoy and Dostoevsky remained popular, while new works celebrated workers and collective life. Ballet and classical music thrived, and Soviet cinema gained international acclaim. Despite censorship, artists found ways to express themselves, sometimes subtly challenging the system through their work. Soviet government tightly controlled information. Newspapers, books, and broadcasts were censored to ensure they aligned with official ideology. Propaganda was everywhere, from posters to films, shaping public opinion and promoting loyalty to the state. Dissenting voices were silenced, and access to foreign media was restricted. While many accepted the official narrative, others found ways to access banned literature and underground music. The struggle for truth and freedom of expression was a constant undercurrent in Soviet life. Religion was officially discouraged in the Soviet Union, as the state promoted atheism. Churches, mosques, and synagogues were closed or repurposed, and religious leaders faced persecution. Despite this, many people continued to practice their faith in secret. Over time, some restrictions eased, but religion remained a sensitive topic. The complex relationship between faith and the state shaped personal and community identities, and religious traditions persisted, especially in rural areas. Soviet Union was a multi-ethnic state, home to over 100 different nationalities. While the government promoted the idea of a unified Soviet people, ethnic tensions and discrimination persisted. Some groups enjoyed cultural autonomy, while others faced forced assimilation or deportation. The legacy of these policies is still felt today in the former Soviet republics. Despite the challenges, many people took pride in their heritage and contributed to the rich tapestry of Soviet society. Urban life in the Soviet Union was shaped by massive housing projects. The government built thousands of apartment blocks known as Khrushchevkas to house the growing urban population. These buildings were functional but often cramped in uniform. Public transport connected neighborhoods, and communal spaces fostered a sense of community. While city life offered opportunities, it also brought challenges like pollution and overcrowding. For many, these apartments became the backdrop of everyday Soviet life. Outside the cities, rural life revolved around collective farms and agricultural production. Villages were often isolated, with limited access to modern amenities. Work on the kolkhoz or collective farm was hard and poorly paid. Despite the difficulties, rural communities maintained strong traditions and close-knit relationships. Seasonal festivals and folk music provided moments of joy. The contrast between urban and rural life was stark, highlighting the diversity of experiences within the Soviet Union. Food shortages were a recurring problem in the Soviet Union. While the state promised abundance, reality often meant empty shelves and long queues. Basic staples like bread, meat, and sugar were rationed at times. People relied on home gardens and bartering to supplement their diets. Despite these challenges, Soviet cuisine developed its own character, with dishes like borscht and pelmeni becoming household staples. Meals were often simple but shared with family and friends, reinforcing social bond. Shopping in the Soviet Union was a unique experience. State-run stores offered a limited selection of goods, and popular items were often in short supply. People queued for hours to buy shoes, clothing, or electronics. Black markets and personal connections became important for acquiring scarce products. Despite these difficulties, shopping trips were social events, and people took pride in finding creative solutions to everyday problems. The scarcity of goods shaped consumer culture in unexpected ways. Soviet Union developed an extensive transportation network, connecting cities and regions by rail, road, and air. Trains were the backbone of long-distance travel, while buses and trams served urban areas. Private cars were rare, and most people relied on public transport. Travel abroad was tightly controlled, with only a select few allowed to visit other countries. Within the USSR, vacations at Black Sea resorts or in the countryside were popular. Travel was both a necessity and a luxury. Employment was guaranteed in the Soviet Union, and nearly everyone had a job. The state assigned people to factories, offices, or farms based on need. While job security was high, wages were often low, and opportunities for advancement were limited. Workplaces were highly organized, with committees overseeing productivity and discipline. Despite the challenges, many took pride in their work and the sense of contributing to a collective goal. The workplace was also a center of social life and camaraderie. Leisure time in the Soviet Union was shaped by state-sponsored activities. Sports, music, and cultural events were encouraged, and many people joined clubs or participated in group outings. Parks, theaters, and stadiums were common gathering places. Summer camps for children provided opportunities for fun and learning. While options were sometimes limited, people found joy in simple pleasures and community events. Leisure was seen as important for building a healthy, productive society. Family life was central to Soviet society. Despite the pressures of work and shortages, families remained close-knit. Marriage and children were encouraged, and the state provided support through maternity leave and childcare. Grandparents often played a key role in raising children. While divorce rates were high, family bonds remained strong. Social gatherings, holidays, and traditions helped maintain a sense of continuity and belonging, even in times of hardship. Young people in the Soviet Union were seen as the future of socialism. The state invested heavily in youth organizations like the Young Pioneers and Komsomol, which taught discipline, patriotism, and socialist values. Schools emphasized science, math, and physical education. Extracurricular activities included sports, music, and art. While the system demanded conformity, it also provided opportunities for personal growth and achievement. Many young people dreamed of contributing to their country's progress. Sports were a source of national pride in the Soviet Union. The state invested in training athletes and building facilities. Soviet teams excelled in the Olympics and other international competitions, showcasing the country's strength and discipline. Physical fitness was promoted for all citizens, with mass participation in sports events. While elite athletes enjoyed special privileges, ordinary people also took part in local competitions and recreational activity. Sports helped foster unity and a sense of achievement. Technology played a growing role in Soviet life, especially in the later decades. Televisions, radios, and telephones became more common, connecting people to news and entertainment. Factories and offices adopted computers and automation, though often lagging behind the West. While some gadgets were hard to obtain, people took pride in Soviet-made products. Technology was seen as a symbol of progress, even if everyday life remained challenging. Rapid industrialization in the Soviet Union came at a cost to the environment. Air and water pollution were widespread, especially in major cities and industrial regions. The government prioritized economic growth over environmental protection, leading to disasters like the Aral Sea shrinking and the Chernobyl nuclear accident. While some efforts were made to address these issues, environmental awareness remained limited. The legacy of these challenges continues to affect the region today. Soviet Union was a one-party state, ruled by the Communist Party. Power was concentrated in the hands of a small elite, with decisions made by the Politburo and Central Committee. Elections were held, but only approved candidates could run. The KGB, the state security agency, monitored citizens and suppressed dissent. While the government claimed to represent the people, real power was tightly controlled. This political structure shaped every aspect of Soviet life. Despite strict controls, dissent existed in the Soviet Union. Writers, artists, and activists who challenged the system risked imprisonment or exile. Samizdat or underground publishing allowed banned works to circulate secretly. Some dissidents became famous abroad, drawing attention to human rights abuses. While open protest was rare, quiet resistance took many forms, from jokes to subtle acts of defiance. The struggle for freedom of expression was a constant undercurrent in Soviet society. Soviet Union was a major player on the world stage. Its foreign policy aimed to spread socialism and counter Western influence. The USSR supported communist movements in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, often providing military and economic aid. The Warsaw Pact united Eastern European allies, while conflicts like the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. Soviet influence shaped global politics for decades, leaving a complex legacy. Space race was a source of immense pride for the Soviet Union. Launching Sputnik in 1957 and sending Yuri Gagarin into orbit in 1961 were historic achievements. The government invested heavily in space technology, inspiring generations of scientists and engineers. While the race with the United States was fierce, it also fostered international cooperation in later years. The legacy of Soviet space exploration endures, with many former cosmonauts celebrated as heroes. Soviet economy was centrally planned, with the government setting production targets and controlling prices. While the system enabled rapid industrialization, it also led to inefficiency and waste. Shortages of consumer goods were common, and innovation was often stifled by bureaucracy. Despite these problems, the USSR achieved impressive feats in heavy industry and science. The economic system was both a source of strength and a cause of persistent challenges. Corruption was a fact of life in the Soviet Union. With shortages and strict regulations, people often relied on personal connections or Blat to get things done. Black markets flourished, offering goods and services unavailable through official channels. Bribery and favoritism undermined trust in the system. While the government tried to crack down on corruption, it remained a persistent problem, shaping everyday life and attitudes toward authority. Brezhnev Era from 1964 to 1982 was marked by stability and stagnation. Living standards improved for many, but economic growth slowed. The government prioritized order and predictability, discouraging innovation and dissent. While some enjoyed greater comfort, others grew frustrated with bureaucracy and lack of opportunity. The period became known as the Era of Stagnation, setting the stage for future reforms. In the 1980s, Mikhail Gorbachev introduced sweeping reforms known as perestroika, restructuring, and glasnost openness. These policies aimed to modernize the economy and increase transparency. Censorship was relaxed and political prisoners were released. While the reforms brought new freedoms, they also led to economic turmoil and rising expectations. The old system struggled to adapt, and calls for change grew louder across the country. As the Soviet Union weakened, nationalist movements gained strength in the republics. People demanded greater autonomy and the right to preserve their languages and cultures. Mass protests and political activism swept across the USSR from the Baltics to Central Asia. The desire for independence grew, and the central government struggled to maintain control. the unity of the Soviet state was unraveling. By the late 1980s, the Soviet Union was in crisis. Economic problems, political unrest, and demands for independence converged. In 1991, a failed coup by hardliners accelerated the collapse. The USSR officially dissolved in December, ending nearly 70 years of communist rule. 15 independent countries emerged, each facing its own challenges and opportunities. The end of the Soviet Union marked a turning point in world history. Legacy of the Soviet Union is complex and contested. For some, it represents progress, equality, and scientific achievement. For others, it is a symbol of repression, hardship, and lost opportunities. Former Soviet republics have taken different paths, with some embracing democracy and others maintaining authoritarian rule. The memory of the USSR continues to shape politics, culture, and identity across the region and beyond. Behind the grand narratives are the personal stories of millions of Soviet citizens. From childhood memories to tales of survival, these stories reveal the human side of history. Some recall moments of joy and achievement, while others remember hardship and loss. Oral histories, diaries, and family photographs help us understand what life was really like. These personal accounts add depth and nuance to our understanding of the Soviet experience. Story of the Soviet Union offers important lessons for the present and future. It shows the power of ideology, the dangers of unchecked authority, and the resilience of ordinary people. The successes and failures of the USSR continue to inform debates about governance, economics, and human rights. By studying this history, we gain insight into the complexities of building a just and equitable society. Today, the Soviet Union is remembered in many different ways. Some look back with nostalgia, recalling a sense of stability and shared purpose. Others focus on the repression and hardships. Museums, films, and literature continue to explore the Soviet past, sparking debate and reflection. The reality of the Soviet Union remains a subject of fascination and controversy, reminding us that history is never simple or one-sided. As we conclude our exploration of the Soviet Union, it's clear that its reality was complex and multifaceted. From grand achievements to deep tragedies, the USSR shaped the lives of millions and left a lasting mark on the world. By looking beyond stereotypes and propaganda, we can better understand the hopes, struggles, and resilience of those who lived through this era. The lessons of the Soviet Union continue to resonate, reminding us of the importance of freedom, justice, and human dignity.